there's 3 times as many women who actively try and help other young women, right, via programs of Big Brother, Big Sister, etcetera. There are
Yeah.
very few male role models out there that you actually want to be around. That's so problematic, and I think that comes down to how do you even fix that? Because that's a really tough one because if the kids don't even care or don't think it's cool or don't wanna listen, right, it was fundamentally important growing up for you to think certain people were cool, right? Like, I remember thinking about my neighbors that I grew up with, Matt and Mitch, like, I thought they were so cool. I thought they were the coolest people ever, but they were just dudes, right? They were just dudes that were a little older. Now, those kids won't find Matt and Mitch super cool because they don't have a Bugatti.
Mm,
That's so
mm,
problematic.
right.
Because then now I won't I used to seek out every opportunity I could to spend time with them. Right? Because I was like, and then I got to learn from them in real life. We'd go out, we'd get in trouble. They'd like save me from not getting in too much trouble. Right? Like all those lessons were things where I got to grow as a person that now all these people don't get because they don't care. They don't care because on their screen, there's just so much extreme.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I was gonna say, back to XRP Timster. How do you get there? Um, you gotta go out and, like, have interactions with people and make mistakes and catch yourself in those moments, right? How often are you really gonna get angry with people? It depends on your personality maybe, but it's not gonna be all that often. So if you're not putting yourself in situations where you're meeting people, you're being emotionally vulnerable to some extent, you're trusting people, you're sharing with people and things of that nature, then you won't get that. And comes back to the thing we were talking about earlier. Like men don't, man, oh man, I was talking to an older guy, he's 36, and we were talking about how like people in his generation, like it's normal for them to just be like cold.
Oh
Like they
God,
just
yes.
don't have the ability
Bro,
to be emotionally vulnerable with people.
no man. Like my dad just didn't have the parts to be emotionally vulnerable. Like he just physically couldn't do it, man. And even my grandfather, like I've never said this story, but this perfectly encapsulates the male experience. I maybe I've told you this, Keith, but I don't think I've said it on the pod. Where there's no one on this planet who showed me more that they love me than my grandfather, but he had never said it to me, not
Mm,
once, not
mm.
once. And every time before he dropped me off to go to school, when I'd get out of it, I'd wrap around the thing, I'd give him a hug, and I'd say, "I love you, Grandpa, thank you." And he never said it back. And so I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, he must not be hearing me." So one day I decided to do an experiment where I was going to stay there and keep saying it until he responded. So I hug him, I say, "I love you, Grandpa, goodbye." Nothing. "I love you, Grandpa, goodbye." At like time 4, he's like, "Go on, have a good day now." And I just
Wow.
realized, I was like, he actually can't.
Wow.
Because there's no question. No one loves me on this planet more than Keith does. Like my grandfather's, his name's Keith. I was
Mhm.
like, there's no one out there who's shown me more that they love me than him. And he literally couldn't say it, Keith.
Wow.
It was one of the most impactful memories I've ever had in my entire life because I just walked back to the Morden campus, like the back, and I just was that little walk was just such an accepting thing for me where I was like, he actually can't. He
That's
literally can't.
crazy, man.
And so then
That's
how did they
crazy.
get become like that, right? And so then now, as these guys who need all these support figures, like who do they go to? Because they can't get it from their local community and their dad doesn't have the parts. Like they literally don't know what to do when you say these things. So it's yes, the young men need support, but we also need to support the older men in terms of how they can even support the younger men because they
Mm,
don't really know how to either.
mm. Yeah, that was super powerful. I appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
Um, the thing is, yeah, when that structure is not there, then you've got what I mean, people will call this, the term that people throw around is like generational trauma or whatever. And like, in a sense, that's a real kind of concept where when you're being raised in an environment where there's no capacity for something, then you don't develop that capacity either. And so until I think this generation or so is kind of seeing this, we're like, oh, like we need to learn how to communicate emotions and be vulnerable and things of that nature. And now there's an opportunity to kind of like shift and change the gears and make sure that younger people as well have that opportunity. But um, But yeah, it gets really hard when even the real world IRL role models don't have that. Um, and then you're also not having as much in real life communication. It gets really difficult uh, for men to have that capacity, and it does create major issues. Mark said something I thought was worth mentioning.
So I've not seen The Sopranos. The Sopranos had an episode about this. Tony wanted to be the strong and silent type, but in reality, he was an emotional jerk. Yeah, I think that's also that's actually a very good point because even a lot of the times when dads adopt this very cold bravado and like I'm so tough and shit like that, they're doing exactly that. They think they want to be the strong and silent type, and it actually makes them the most volatile and emotionally unstable.
Yep.
Right, I can think through times in my own experience where, like, there's just so many contradicting things with that, where when you try to maintain that, you end up being the complete opposite, which is very, very interesting. XRP had another one here saying, "I think technology is breaking us apart." I I it is technology, but it's the technology in the hands of the people and the systems that operate those, right? Like, how amazing could a better incentive structured system become for technology? Right? Like, I honestly think that we will get the opportunity to see, is it really us that's the problem or is it capitalized social media that's the problem when we do get these genuinely good products that are decentralized? Right? Because then we
Mm.
get to actually see. Because now when the systems are built to kind of avoid the outcome that we've currently experienced with just like sheer ad revenue time spent on the platform, then I think we get to see. Because if those are still shit, then maybe we are the problem. Right?
And then Mom
Go,
Spaghettios,
go
what
for it.
up? What up? We haven't seen from you today. I like what's oh my goodness. I think what's important is to know exactly what you want. Like
Mm,
exactly what you want. No ambiguity, something you can explain easily without errors. I think it's always going to come down to, I mean, we've talked about this a lot too. Um, you got to define what you want out of life, but then sometimes a lot of people are trying to take the biggest thing that I think I learned, at least that I felt like I've taken away from growing up, becoming more mature, is like I don't really look up to anybody anymore.
hmm
Um, it used to be like the billionaires and like all of that. Like I thought that was like the thing that I wanted to do with my life or who I wanted to be. And then I just slowly realized like, oh, those people have major flaws. And then you come down the list and you know, look at everyone else and like no one's life is perfect. And not only that, but everyone has major flaws and things that they're substituted for things that you might not want to substitute in your life. So, yeah, I do agree. You kind of got to know exactly what you want. And when we're in this world where like idolization is like the function of the whole thing, right? Who has the most followers? Who's got the most likes? It gets skewed because we now once again you take out the religion, you take out the creator or the religious figure that has a moral code, and you put only these figures that have no moral code, but you put them in the same pedestal, same place. You get absolute degeneracy. um, so then, yeah, the only real answer is to realize, like, okay, well, none of that is actually what is the answer. And I'm going to have to dig deep inside and figure out what are the things that I'm being pulled toward naturally and trying to see how I can build my life around those things, maybe.
Completely. No, I completely agree. I think you got to step away from it to then see the alternatives in general. Because if you're spending all of your time in a toxic place, you just think every place is toxic,
Mm.
right? Whereas now you can carry your toxic thoughts with you wherever you go. Even if you're in the most healthy place, in the most healthy relationship, if you're watching garbage and it's tainting your mind, you're going to destroy that. And then you'll say it's because of the state of dating or the state of whatever, when really it was the state of you and your mind and your inability to think through things because you're not getting an accurate depiction of everything else that's going on. So a lot of good comments in here. We got one from Shayla saying, I jumped in about 10 minutes ago. Unfortunately, it is seen as soft to be a man and express your feelings. Yes, it is sad. I believe the media perpetuates this to keep men isolated from expressing themselves. Yeah, I think there's probably a strong degree of truth to that. If we all talked, I think it's a lot harder to control us. Whereas if you make us kind of a victim to our current emotional state, then you're very easy to influence because you just turn on certain levers, turn off other ones, and then you create whatever system that you want. And I think that that's true even for people our age too. Like I've always been the person who's tried to have deeper chats with guys, and they get so uncomfortable, man, so uncomfortable. And I've always been okay with this because I used to have these conversations with myself. because
Mhm.
I would stay up really late at night and I would like talk to myself, as crazy as that sounds, to like work through the problems of that day. Right? I'd be
Yeah.
like, why did this go the way that it did? I wonder if I had done this, like, how would they have responded? Where were they coming to this from? And so I did a lot of these reps by myself. And so I just saw the value of what it would have meant to have someone to talk about this with. So I always tried to be that for the guys that I'd come across. And they almost never could take me up on it because they felt so uncomfortable.
Hmm. That's an interesting thing to talk to yourself. Take that one with a grain of salt, everybody. No, I'm just
I did that a
kidding.
lot, but not in like the literal sense of talking to myself like I'm multiple people, but it would be more of a thought exercise, is maybe a less crazy way of sounding way to say it.
No, but actually, to speak on that, I think it's wrong to demonize that concept, period. But we definitely do. Um, but back to what we were saying earlier, like some things need to be verbalized, even like
Mm,
actually. And now I'm not encouraging everyone to only do that with yourself, but to not be afraid of doing that with yourself. Like, think about the people that would say that that's crazy.
yeah.
I bet you the people that I would want to hang out with, if I would just put it that way, I don't think that they would think that that's crazy.
No, I wouldn't at all. I just know that other people do,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
right? And so that's the thing, but I've done that my entire life, and I owe most of my improvements in my life from doing that. That's also why, like, I would always piss off my parents and shit because I've already thought through this scenario they're living through right now. Right? So when like a 12-year-old kid, a 13-year-old kid is like predicting their behavior, they don't like that. But it also gives you a huge advantage because almost no one else will do that. So you start to be able to read people really well too, because people aren't that complicated. And when you understand the certain few things that are influencing their behavior, it becomes wildly accurate to predict what they'll do next. Because you know that they only have like two or three things that's shaping their entire life. They just don't realize that those are the two or three things. So I think, yeah, talking to yourself is a really good place. And then also, I would say continue to be vulnerable enough to try to bridge these conversations because there may be some surprising places where you can have them. That's one thing that I've also found really rewarding is when I come across someone who is down for a conversation like that. It's a pretty awesome experience.
If you're enjoying this, this was actually taken out of a piece of our live stream where we go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. If you want to see the full version of this episode, you can click the link in the description down below. But for now, back to the clip. I'm trying to find this book that I read. It was written by John Maxwell, who is one of the top leaders in leadership development speaking, or figures in that regard. And one of his books, I think it's How Successful People Think. And one of the points in that book was about reflection and how important it is to reflect as a successful person. And it's just one of those things that you really, really can't avoid because if you plan on really breaking down the things that have occurred through your day and eventually throughout your life over time, it takes conscious thought and it also takes subconscious thought to actually process all of that. And if you're not using your conscious mind to start to really think through those things, and when you get the subconscious involved, it won't do as much as you need it to do. But anyways, that reflective thinking is really, really important. There's okay, now this is a little bit out there.
Go,
There's
please.
this I don't even know what they call it. It's not a religion. It's kind of like a secret society. And the thought is called uh, Rosicrucianism. And one of the things that they discuss in their teachings is around this concept of basically at the end of every day, what you do is you look at your day in reverse. And when you're laying down in bed, you think back from everything that happened to get you there. And you go backwards throughout your entire day until you woke up. And um, it's just another way to practice reflective thinking in a way that kind of ends up like the way that it really works in my head when I've tried this is you kind of think about the thing that happened, like you'll think about it in chapters. You're like, okay, I was here, and then okay, back forward again. and then you go back to the previous chapter, and then you go kind of go forward through that chapter. And at least that's how it's kind of worked in my own head. But to do that though, you kind of also have to naturally create causality in like what got you to the next place, what happened from chapter to chapter. And you start to realize things that you might not have thought about if you didn't consciously take the time throughout your day to think about what actually occurred in that way. You could do it forward as well, but this was just the exercise. uh, so, anyways, just wanted to point that out. There's a lot of thoughts that's, the esoteric kind of thinking that comes back to reflection, and that being
Mm.
a very, very important part of getting yourself to where you want to be with your life. And like Mom Spaghettios said, defining exactly what it is that you actually want.
It makes it so much easier to acquire it too because you learn these micro lessons across the board, and they're almost barriers to entry where almost every person that I seemingly have come across is that they evolve by each one of those they're willing to go through. Like a lot of people, they get stuck on one for a long period of time, and that defines their next year, 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20, 40 long of existence. That's a story that they play on repeat, right? Because if they have that uncomfortable reflection, then they'll change as a person. Because if you look at anything through enough scrutiny, you'll be like, okay, this is where I went wrong. This is what I need to change. And the people who are constantly living better lives, it's because they're super cool with that practice of saying, where did I screw this up? What could I have learned from this? And you also become really good at reading people because you can basically kind of loosely tell where they are in their journey, right? And so then you can kind of tell how they'll respond to certain things as well. So it's an incredibly valuable practice, something that I do pretty well every day, and it means a lot. And I think a lot of men, whenever they're forced to think about something, they always retreat to porn, to gambling, to physical activity was also a big thing for some guys, right?
Mhm.
But they do run away from the thoughts. And I think that's also why we have a lot of the problems that we do.
Having a radio that has the capacity, right, to receive any of those different frequencies, AM and FM.
Mm.
Okay. Um, Having that is super powerful because then there's signals that are out there that you can receive. Whereas if you just cut stuff off, not open minded, you're gonna miss a lot of life and what it has to offer. And I don't know if that's something that you can develop once you're older. I feel like it's something that if you don't do it young and keep it and know that that's something that you're consciously doing with your life, then I bet it could be really hard to go backward and be like, oh, I'm going to be more open minded now. Uh,
I think it's always
I
possible,
don't
but it
know.
would take radical hardship. And I think the how radical it would need to be depends on how old the person would be, how set they are in their ways. Because even my mom, like she gets into these patterns, right? Where I always talk to her, I'm like, "Do you see what you're doing? Like you're getting into these destructive patterns." Blah blah blah. She's like, "Oh well, an old dog, you can't teach an old dog new tricks." Like they'll even say that out loud. They'll be like, "Oh," and then when you say something is hard, you're making it hard, right? If you have this belief system that when you're older, it's like that much harder to change, then
Mhm.
then yes, it's going to be true. And so there's always like these datas and these figures, and I don't know how much I prescribe to any of that shit. I think a lot of it is there to make people give up, to be
Mm.
honest, because I think that there's always examples to the contrary. And so is that saying that it's not possible, or is it saying that it's harder? I did the same thing with my knee, right? When I was looking at all these studies, I was going so ham. I was reading like every medical study on anyone who had had as many knee surgeries as I had, right? And they were all bad outcomes. But then I'm like, they're not me. I can do this, right? And so then if
Right.
you go to places where of course they're going to study the ones that didn't work out, there's more to study, right? At that point, like if someone was super amazing and it sorted their problem, like they wouldn't be in the study. So then I realized I was like, I wouldn't be in this study because my life's going to be so good I couldn't be involved. And so obviously, like not the same as if you're a 7-year-old person who's set in their ways, but I do think that I was only willing to think like that because I was pushed to the depths.
Hmm.
So I think it's possible at any point in time, maybe harder, but I do think it's possible. And I also don't want people who are listening to this who feel like they're like 60 or 70 or 50, whatever, that they feel like they're stuck because I don't believe in that at all. I think that's one of the biggest scams.
Do you think that you have to go through something like bad?
Thank you so much. Or I think you either have to or you have to develop a sense of empathy that allows you to. And I don't know if you can get there without going through it first yourself, right? I think it's probably possible, but I know for me, if I wasn't pushed to like the depths of not wanting to be here, I don't think I'd have a lot of the skills that I do. Are there other means of acquiring them? Probably. Like I think love could have given it to me. Right? Like if I grew up in a system that was very nurturing and loving and when I asked questions I wasn't penalized for it, I think I probably could have got to the same place. But then it's like a system thing of are we going to do that for enough people? That's also ultimately like one of my life goals is to try to be the person who makes other people like that.
Mm,
Because I think it is possible. I genuinely do. Like a lot of times, like the if you look up like secret societies and all of this shit, like how they got people to do crazy things was through like trauma and like very evil things that worked, right? I personally think that love is stronger than that. I just think that it's more work probably, which is why
mhm.
they don't do it.
Hey, you made it to the end of the clip. That means you're probably enjoying this. And if so, just know that you can catch us live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to see the full version of this episode, you can click the link in the description down below. Otherwise, YouTube thinks that you will enjoy this next.